मैं पीके विजयन सर को।
सलाम साथियों, मंदिर साहब ने बहुत कुछ आपके सामने रखा है और मुझे उसके बाद कुछ खास बोलने का नहीं है, पर मैं कुछ 3-4 मुद्दे आपके सामने रखना चाहता हूं जो हो सकता है आपको कंट्रोवर्शियल भी लगे। अगर ऐसा लगा तो अच्छा है, तो आप उस कंट्रोवर्सी को लेके जाएंगे, यहाँ से सोचेंगे, बात करेंगे। होपफुली आप मेरे ऊपर हिंसा ना करें कंट्रोवर्सी को लेके। पहली बात जो मैं रखना चाहता हूं आपके सामने वो ये है कि जरा एक हाइपोथेटिकल बात है। गांधी की जगह अगर नेहरू को मारा गया था, व्हाट वुड हैव हैपेंड टू दिस कंट्री? अगर आप सोचेंगे, जो राइट विंग मूवमेंट है वो 80 तक 1980 80s में एक्चुअली वो पिकअप करने लगा। फ्रॉम 1947 टिल 1985, 86, 87 they had to struggle. That is the legacy of Nehru. आप अगर गौर करेंगे तो सेक्युलरिज्म जो शब्द है वो बाद में आया था कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में। द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट वर्ड इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बिफोर दैट, इन माय ओपिनियन, इज सोशलिज्म। It is a socialist country. It started on that premise कि हम बिल्कुल सर फ्रेटर्निटी भी है उसमें, पर उस फ्रेटर्निटी को हम इंप्लीमेंट कैसे करेंगे, इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज कैसे करेंगे, उसको एडमिनिस्टर कैसे करेंगे, वो एक ही तरीका था, वो सोशलिस्ट। इक्वालिटी can only truly come into being when there is a socialist system. The early period that Mandir Sahab covered very well, उसमें मैं कुछ और ऐड करना चाहता हूं। जो सिस्टम ऑफ गवर्नेंस हमें मिला था अंग्रेजों से, it is founded on an idea of rights, fundamental rights, civil rights, democratic rights। और राइट्स क्या होते हैं? राइट्स जो है वो आपका पोजेशन है, आप पोजेस करते हैं राइट को। ये इस पर मैंने कहीं और बहुत कुछ लिखा है, तो आई वोंट गो इनटू द डिटेल ऑफ दैट, बट बेसिक पॉइंट ये है कि व्हेन वी गॉट इंडिपेंडेंस, दो तरह ये जो राइट्स का सवाल है वो दो हिस्सों में बांटा गया था। एक था पर्सनल इंडिविजुअल राइट्स जो सिविल मैटर्स में आए, और दूसरा था कम्युनिटी राइट्स विच केम अंडर द इश्यू ऑफ पर्सनल लॉज। अब you can see how that has taken shape historically after that. हर कम्युनिटी का ये क्लेम था कि हमारा हक है, हमारे अपने मेंबर्स के ऊपर हमारा हक है। So the individual gets subsumed in the community, चाहे वो मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी था या हिंदू एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा। अगेन गोइंग बैक टू दैट स्पेक्युलेटिव क्वेश्चन कि अगर नेहरू ना होते तो क्या होता, किस तरह का ये होता? मोस्ट प्रोबेबली सरदार पटेल would have become the prime minister. Most probably the right wing would have had a very well established political reign from the 50s and 60s onwards. The reason why they hate Nehru so much is because it took them 40 years because of him to begin to rise to power. he was, to go back to my point, he was the person responsible in many ways for reform of the Hindu laws that created a community that could to some extent dissolve one very important part of the Hindu identity, which is the caste system. अब तीसरा मुद्दा जो मैं आपके सामने रखना चाहता हूं, you cannot separate communalism from casteism. Communal जो communal identity है, communal feeling है, communal mentality है, it is founded on a caste identity. It is founded on an upper caste identity. हिंदू खतरे में है हिंदुत्व से, और हिंदुत्व क्या कहता है? हिंदुत्व is the term that V.D. Savarkar used for his book. And what is the second part of that title? Who is a Hindu? And how does he define who is a Hindu? 6 क्राइटेरिया है जिनका कर्म भूमि, धर्म भूमि, पुण्य भूमि, मातृभूमि, पितृभूमि, एक और है जो मुझे याद नहीं आ रहा है, बट बेसिकली ये हिंदू आइडेंटिटी जो है वो टेरिटोरियल बना जाता है. एक टेरिटोरियल आइडेंटिटी में आप एक चीज जो अदरवाइज फंडामेंटल है हिंदुइज्म के लिए बिल्कुल हटा देते हैं. कास्ट, जाति, वर्ण, ये सब बिल्कुल मेंशन ही नहीं करते हैं, और सिर्फ ये एक टेरिटोरियल मेंटालिटी, टेरिटोरियल आइडेंटिटी बना लेते हैं. और ये भी कौन डिफाइन करता है? Hinduism in this sense is not defined by the lower castes. It is defined by the upper caste. Hindu communalism is therefore an upper caste communalism. It is not a lower caste communalism. Having said that, you must realize that this is one of the reasons why the right wing today is so steadfastly resisting a caste census. चाहे वो बिहार में हो या पूरा इंडिया में हो, कास्ट सेंसस वो नहीं चाहते हैं. क्यों? क्योंकि उनका जो इल्यूजन है कि एक होमोजेनस हिंदू आइडेंटिटी है वो टूट जाएगा. I want to read out a passage from an excerpt from a book. एक धनवर मेघवांशी की किताब है, Why I Could Not Become a Hindu. मेघवांशी जो है दलित राइटर है, दलित एक्टिविस्ट है, जो आरएसएस में कई साल एक्टिव रहे थे, और उस किताब में उनका एक्सपीरियंस है वो दोहराते हैं उसमें. And here in this particular excerpt he is talking about the time when the demolition of the Babri Masjid was going to take place, और कैसे आरएसएस में मोबिलाइजेशन हो रहा था कार सेवक्स को अयोध्या पहुंचाने के लिए, और वो बाबरी मस्जिद का डिस्ट्रक्शन कराने के लिए क्या कर रहे थे. So he says he had heard a lot about weapons being stored in the basement of mosques, and this leads up to a description of a second battle of independence. वही बात जो सर ने बताया कि 22nd of February में इंडिपेंडेंस हुआ था. That is leading up to that, the second battle of independence. He tells us how a lot of the Dalits and other OBCs were mobilized to become car sevaks for the destruction of the Babri Masjid. And he says that they were all taken to Ajmer station to be taken to Ayodhya. Rajasthan का आदमी है. Ajmer station में he discovered that The cadres of the RSS were not supposed to indulge in such work. यानी कि जो upper caste cadre थे वो इनके साथ नहीं जाएंगे. He writes, as the train started to slide out of the station, all the important functionaries slid out of the train. I saw how one by one the big folk, the industrialists, the Sangh Pracharaks, the leaders of the VHP and the BJP all excused themselves. Having wished us well, they went back to their homes. Only people like me remained, impassioned Dalits, Adivasis, other young people from the lower caste, and a few sadhus and sons. To take charge of us, some lower order functionaries tried to put us at ease. Don't worry, these people have other contingents to see off, and then they'll follow us directly to Ayodhya. They were never to come. They were sensible people and went back to their homes. I understood that sensible people always use us. We who are driven by passions, they push us into battle and return to their safe little groups. In this lies their greatness. Maybe greatness is just another word for coming.
One of the most important things we have to remember about communalism is that it is deliberately and very carefully planned, not just as an attack on Muslims, Christians and other minorities, but as a way to consolidate and to bring back into the Hindu fold those castes that appear to or want to break away. Christianity और इस्लाम को इसलिए नफरत सिर्फ इसलिए नफरत नहीं करते हैं कि वो जैसे हिंदुत्व लोग कहते हैं कि उनका जेरूसलम और मक्का भारत में नहीं है, इसलिए वो विदेशी धर्म है, विदेशी मजहब है. More importantly, Christianity and Islam are fundamentally in the very tenets of the religion. Equality is written. All human beings will be treated as equal. All members of that community will be treated as equal. ये उन मजहबों के स्क्रिप्चर्स में है, उनके प्रैक्टिसेस में शायद नहीं है, दैट्स अ डिफरेंट मैटर, बट कम से कम थियोलॉजिकली वो एक एक्सप्लिसिट हिस्सा है जो हिंदुइज्म में नहीं है. दिस इज व्हाट दे फील थ्रेटन्ड बाय. और कई बार राइट्स इसलिए हुआ है क्योंकि लोअर कास्ट की कम्युनिटीज जो है ऑन मास कन्वर्ट हो जाते हैं, खासकर इस्लाम या क्रिश्चियनिटी को. There are many cases like that. One of the most famous ones was in Tamil Nadu in 1987, when a whole village converted to Islam, and that created a huge controversy कि Hindu खतरे में है. But the point to remember is that these incidents of communal violence have been increasing since the 80s for this very reason, because they have been slowly spreading successfully into the lower caste communities as well. सवाल यह है कि इस तरह का सक्सेस क्यों आया है, कैसे आया है? One answer that Vijayan himself gives is that the centuries of oppression, सदियों के बाद इनको पहली बार acknowledge किया जाता है, and they feel grateful. आरएसएस के अंदर इनको जी जी करके पुकारते हैं तो उनको अच्छा लगता है कि जो पहले इनको छूने क्या देखते तक नहीं, अभी इनके साथ बात करने को तैयार है. They feel grateful. It is only after they experience what comes after that gratitude that they begin to realize कि वाकई में कुछ बदला नहीं. That same casteist mentality is still there in the RSS, in the BJP, in its various outfits. So, when we talk about the growth in communal violence since the last 15, 20, 25, 30 years, what we have to see is exactly what Mandir Sahib was talking about. कि अभी we are transitioning from an idea of the nation that we were going to create, that we had created to some extent at the time of independence, to an idea of the nation which will allow upper caste hegemony, and it will marginalize and render minorities, Christians and Muslims in particular, into second-class citizens. Why do you think they are so fascinated by Israel? They see the Israel model and the way in which Israel has dominated Palestinians as the appropriate form of governance to be brought into India also. Israel में यहूदियों के लिए डेमोक्रेसी है, फिलिस्तीनियों के लिए डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है. That's the model they want to implement here. This idea that you can have a constitution which I just want to mention something else at this point. I watched an interview of one of the great thinkers of the right wing, Subramanian Swamy, जिसमें इंटरव्यूअर जो है उनसे पूछते हैं कि आप मुस्लिम्स को इतना why do you hate them so much? So he's very blunt. He says जहाँ जहाँ मुस्लिम्स आते हैं वहाँ प्रॉब्लम्स हो जाते हैं, वहाँ वायलेंस है, वहाँ कंफ्यूजन है, वहाँ डिसऑर्डर है, राइट्स है, एक्सेट्रा. And he says, what are you talking about? India has the second largest Muslim population in the world. And he says they should be grateful that we have allowed them to live here. Then she says, what about Article 14? Article 14 guarantees equality of every person before the law. That is the one article on the basis of which every other idea of equality follows. And he says something very interesting. He says, Article 14 has been misinterpreted. Article 14 actually means equality for equals. Meaning that Muslims, Christians are not equals in this country. This is the mindset of the BJP, RSS, Hindutva. Equality does not extend to everyone. This is what we are going to face if they win the next general elections. बिल्कुल सही कहा मंदिर साहब ने कि जिस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के बल पर हम आज बोल पा रहे हैं वही खत्म हो जाएगा. Free speech will be a forgotten thing. How do we fight this? Where is the resistance going to come from? It is very difficult to counter 70 years of work. You have to appreciate that. 70-80 साल से इन लोगों ने काम किया है, आइडियोलॉजिकल वर्क किया है, ग्रास रूट्स में भी किया है. जब मैं अपना फील्ड वर्क कर रहा था इन्हीं हिंदू नेशनलिज्म पर केरला में कर रहा था मैं, I discovered that even in a place like Kerala, the number of shakhas is phenomenal. In fact, at that time, Kerala had the largest density of shakas in the entire country. So I asked some of the people I interviewed from the VHP and the RSS, कि how will you possibly come to power in Kerala? क्योंकि यहाँ Muslims की संख्या इतना बड़ा है, Christians की संख्या इतना बड़ा है, तो how will you possibly come? He said, we are not bothered. Hindus को हम convert करें यही बहुत है. They have been working for a very long time. The task before us now is not a small task. इसको इस विचारधारा को बदलने के लिए it will require a reaffirmation of the idea of the nation that we had to begin with. We need to reaffirm a socialist idea of the nation, where equality comes first. Secularism follows from that equality. Democracy follows from that equality. Today, they are willing to give reservation in jobs. Why? Because government jobs are being reduced. The employment levels are dropping because the private sector is becoming a bigger employer than the government sector. It is these sections of the populace, the OBC, the SC, the ST, who will suffer the most as we head towards privatization. Religious communalism is very, very closely tied to the privatization of the economy also. So unless we see these different issues and we connect the dots, unless we are able to communicate to the world that this is what we need to do, that's a long battle ahead. But we need to make the beginning now. And maybe the first step is, as Mother Sahib said, to convince ourselves about that vision. I'll leave you with that, and if you have questions, please direct them to me.
Thank you, sir.